Nintendo! This dominating gaming company has been inspiring our hearts and minds with characters like Mario and Link for over a century. No, that's not a mistake. Surprisingly, Nintendo has been operating for nearly 130 years. Now I hear what you're saying. Exister! There weren't video games back in the 1800s. Which is 100% true. The first video game wouldn't be made until October of 1958. Which leaves the question, what did Nintendo make? In my quest to find this answer, I discovered that the origins of the gaming company we have all come to know and love are as interesting as they are bizarre. Nintendo was founded in 1881 by Fusajiro Yamauchi. My apologies if I completely butchered that name, and if I butcher any other names in this video. Fusajiro was born in a time where all foreign things were banned in Japan. But as a young man, he discovered a love for playing cards, which were introduced by the Portuguese, who in turn had gotten them from Christian missionaries in Europe. Because traditional playing cards were banned in Japan, Fusajiro and many other Japanese used Hanafuda cards that traded the traditional numbers of playing cards for the 12 seasons of the Japanese year. When the ban was lifted, Fusajiro began Nintendo, which loosely translates to believe in the gods. In 1881, Nintendo specialized in the same Hanafuda cards Fusajiro had enjoyed in his early life. While small at first, Nintendo quickly grew. Eventually, in 1929, Fusajiro retired, leaving the growing company of Nintendo to his son-in-law, who was named Sekiro Kaneda, who began a secondary company called Marafuku to distribute the Hanafuda cards as well as the many other kinds of cards Nintendo had begun to produce in 1947. These ventures created a storm of popularity for Nintendo's cards, and after the company was given to Sekiro's grandson named Hiroshi, who renamed the distribution company to also be Nintendo, although with different kanji, decided to start making playing cards from plastic, making Nintendo the first company in Japan to ever produce high-quality plastic cards. Soon after, in 1959, Nintendo made a deal with Disney, allowing for the production of playing cards with Disney characters on them. This was in an effort to make playing cards more than just for gambling. The endeavor was a huge success, with over 600,000 decks being sold in the first year. Between the years of 1963 and 1969 was when Nintendo's ventures went from what they truly knew to a bizarre territory. A few of these ventures include a taxi service, an instant rice company, and even a small chain of Japanese love hotels. While almost all of these ventures failed to turn a profit, it's still amusing to imagine a Nintendo brand vacuum cleaning your home while you cook Nintendo brand rice. It's surreal to think that if these ventures had been successful, we might have never seen Mario or Luigi, and we might still have Nintendo vacuum cleaners. It was in 1966 that Nintendo really started pushing towards children's markets, focusing on toys, many of which became quite popular in Japan. One specific toy, the Nintendo Beam Gun game, was a precursor to the NES Zapper that was used in games like Duck Hunt. It was the same toy that actually got Nintendo into games, with their first product being used with the first games console, the Magnavox Odyssey. It was around the year 1975 that Nintendo began distributing the Magnavox in Japan to a new audience. After an average amount of success, Nintendo began developing its own game consoles. While successes, these games and consoles were for the most part only released in Japan, barring a few exceptions like the arcade versions of Donkey Kong and the original Mario Bros. Then, in 1980, Nintendo created the Game & Watch, or the G&W for short, which was in turn a precursor for their later handheld console, the Game Boy. The G&W was very successful, selling nearly 50 million consoles over its production time. It wasn't until 2 years later that Nintendo would release one of the most popular consoles ever. The Famicom was released in 1982, and after selling well was discovered to have a faulty chip. Much to the disappointment of Nintendo, the console had to be recalled, causing the company to lose nearly $500,000 in revenue. But wait, I hear what you're asking. Isn't the NES the console you should be talking about? And once again, you are correct. You see, following the recall, there was this huge drop in video games called the Video Game Crisis of 1983. People just stopped playing them. This was largely because companies like Atari consistently had been producing bad games. In my personal opinion, I see Atari's E.T. game as the straw that broke the camel's back. E.T. is often considered one of the worst games ever made. That being said, Nintendo, ever the gambling company, decided to push their consoles worldwide anyway, renaming the Famicom to the NES and selling it in 1985, with the Nintendo seal of approval, which meant that any game wanting to be sold on the NES had to be approved as good by Nintendo. This genius market strategy rekindled the fire in the public for video games and nearly single-handedly saved the video game industry. The NES was sold with many iconic pieces, including Rob the Robot and probably the most famous, the Zapper. One of the first games ever available for the NES was the wildly popular Super Mario Bros. That was bundled with Duck Hunt. And the rest is history. Nintendo created many more games consoles and is remembered by many as the innovators of the gaming market. I think that Nintendo never really lost its gambler spirit. Like its founder, Nintendo was never afraid to bet it all and come out on top. That's part of the reason why it became one of the largest gaming companies in the world. Another is, since its origin, it's always been a company of dreams, with inspired people making their mark on the world by following their passions. And so, on that note, I'd like to wish Nintendo a late birthday. As of September 23rd, 2020, Nintendo is 131 years old. So here's to 131 years of entertainment for all ages, and may Nintendo continue to warm the hearts and minds of people everywhere. I've been Exister, and if you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe, as it helps out me and the channel. If you want to add anything, have anything extra to know, or interesting stories about huge companies, just want to say hi, leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to respond. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.